What's going on, everybody? I'm Jabby Kuwait, joined by ACHARA Kirk.
What's up?
We've got Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, Easter eggs, and details you missed from new Rockstars. Thank you so much for joining us. Hit that subscribe button, please, bell icon, all notifications, and pretty please vote this up. Let YouTube know you're enjoying what you're watching while you're subscribing and upvoting. Subscribe to new Rockstars. There's a link in the description below if you want to click on that. Give the original video an upvote. Subscribe to them from there. Also, we will have a live stream tomorrow, and so keep a lookout for that. It will be for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Spoiler Talk live stream. Join us, please. All right, here we go.
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and this is a breakdown of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, a heartbreaking and stunningly animated sequel to 2018's Into the Spider-Verse, a movie filled with Easter eggs, cameos, and incredible attention to detail. I'm gonna break this movie down frame by frame to point out a ton of details that you might have missed, and I revisited and broke down the 2018 film for dozens of new details, and I hosted a live stream of Across the Spider-Verse on the Deep Dive channel. So subscribe to the Deep Dive and support us with a Miles Morales Multiverse Dive shirt over at nerdriot.shop. And whoa, hey, look at that. I'm already wearing it right now. I'm gonna wear this shirt until I'm bleeding from my armpits. Okay, over the opening glitching logos for Sony, Columbia Pictures, and Marvel, there is a brief Miles from his name tag in the 2018 film that he slapped on everything. And the Lord and Miller logo has their crest glitching to an old-timey fine mustaches ad with the faces of the producers themselves. And as with the 2018 film, we actually open with the approved by the Comic Code Authority stamp, which was put on comics covers in the 50s to reassure parents that the comics wouldn't glorify crime or crap their kids' minds.
From my Archie
we open
comics.
with Gwen Stacy, this time framing this sequel as much her story as it is Miles's.
Yeah.
She says, let's do things differently this time, telling Miles' story third person instead of the first person perspective of the introductions of the first film. We see the selfie of Gwen and Miles that she had on her phone in the last film, where you can actually see Peter B. Parker's legs stretched out between the bus seats behind them. This was on their bus ride back, the first time they really connected. And we see Gwen drumming as a member of her band, the Mary Janes, setting up the wild drum solo music that we hear over the closing minutes of the movie as Gwen reassembles her new band. But during Gwen's solo here...
Did the opening drum bits remind you of anything at all? You know, when it was showing like circles and stuff like that with the music?
It's almost like it was tickling the back of my brain, but I don't know what it was. Do you know?
I don't know specifically what it is. I couldn't like tell you a particular title, but it felt very reminiscent of like old cartoons.
Yeah.
You know, like I couldn't quite peg if it was like Fantasia or if it was something just from like old Looney Tunes or something like that, like from the 50s. But I vividly remember something like that from like my childhood of like when they would go over music and jazz and stuff like that, where you'd see like the circles kind of come out like that.
It feels like it's something that happens a lot in animation when they're showing music.
We see flashes of Miles' life from the first film, but also his upcoming battles with Miguel and the Spot. So really, this kind of serves as an overture or a prologue for the events to come. This is Gwen's home universe, Earth 65, and the animators designed it to have a pastel watercolor aesthetic. It looks so great. The paint strokes flood into each other, a contrast to the harder lines and boundaries of the other realities. On the subway, Miles appears in the windows, recalling the 2018 film when Stan Lee appeared as an angelic presence on passing trains, which really hit hard back then because it was just a few weeks after Stan died. Gwen remembers before Miles when there was her Peter Parker. This Peter's voiced by Jack Quaid. In her flashbacks, Gwen has longer hair because this was before Miles stuck his hand to her hair and she had to shave it. Gwen flashes through several meals that she, Peter, George, and Aunt May prayed before, including one that might be Halloween. Peter dresses as a dinosaur or a lizard. Gwen in a traffic cone shirt. George is a cowboy. And they're all eating, what is that? Bagels. This is the cursed food that led to the Spot and in 2022 became the symbol for the multiverse with everything everywhere all at once. The bully that roughs up Earth 65 Peter isn't Flash Thompson, it's Ned. As in the Spider-Gwen comics, this Peter becomes the lizard, thus his Halloween costume, which we actually saw at the end of Gwen's backstory in the 2018 film. And then we hear the voice of J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson reporting, Captain George Stacy is leading the manhunt for Spider-Woman. Simmons voices J. Jonah Jameson in several different realities in this movie, including the Lego universe later. This guy is a freaking Nexus being, I tell you. In the Stacy family home, Gwen is watercolor painted blue in an otherwise pink wash, showing her depression. Her room, her sanctuary, is also blue like she is, but her dad, in orange and fuchsia, wears a faded Visions Gymnastic Academy sweatshirt, suggesting he might have once done cheer and probably coached Gwen's acrobatics when she was young. He's a good papa. Was replaced her teal ballet slippers with teal Chuck Taylors, which she reportedly got from Hobie Brown. I don't know, maybe they met before Gwen teams up with Miguel and Jess in the Spider Society. When Gwen hugs her dad, the blueness of her room warms into pink watercolors. Sometimes that's all it takes to change your whole world. Above Gwen's door is a sign reading, "Protect trans kids," and some of you are mad now. And if that pisses you off, feel free to stop watching. I don't need reviews. Spider-Gwen webs up her dad.
So, how's the manhunt for me going?
Yeah, she lowers her voice just like Miles does when he is masked and he talks to his dad.
Thank you for your bravery tonight.
Now, the Vulture she fights glitched here from another universe, and he's named Adriano Tumino instead of Adrian Toombs, voiced by Jorma Taccone. His design and his sepia color tone and his papery texture is based on Leonardo da Vinci's sketches. I like how when he fires weapons, da Vinci scribbles and instructions appear around him. He lands part of the Jeff Koons retrospective exhibit. This is a real exhibit at the Guggenheim with balloon animal fixtures made from stainless steel. So basically, this is a Renaissance era artist disgusted with postmodernism. It's just kind of an art joke. He says, which translates to bye girl on the screen, but Gwen is saved by Miguel O'Hara, voiced by Oscar Isaac, Spider-Man 2099 from Earth 928, who first appeared in the 2018 film post-credit scene. Gwen says,
I'm sorry, who exactly are you supposed to be?
Isn't it obvious?
The Blue Panther.
That's funny.
The caped Blue Satyr?
Yes, Blue Panther reference to Black Panther with similar claws, caped Blue Satyr reference to Batman, caped Crusader with similar brooding. When he's introduced with this comic, it lands on the stack of the comics of all the other Spider people we've met, including all the ones in the first film in the order that we met them.
The stack of comics is also a brilliant way to chapter each part of the film.
Yeah, I loved that. And just like reminding us just how comic booky it really is. Like, I loved that nod to that aspect of it.
Including all the ones in the first film in the order that we met them. I just like how this stack is cumulative. Miguel shames her and the others for breaking the multiverse in the last movie, and then he says,
He started on Doctor Strange and the little nerd back on Earth 1999-99.
Who's Doctor Strange? Sounds like he maybe shouldn't practice medicine.
yes, Earth 199-999 has in the past been the numerical designation for the MCU films and the shows, but this was thrown into question when Christine Palmer called it 616 in Multiverse of Madness. I made a video proposing that the MCU deserves neither designation. Vulture reassembles his wing, and Miguel complains, he's got hammer space. And then we see an editor's note text window popping up, defining it as an infinite extra-dimensional storage area for cartoon hammers and the like. This is calling back Spider-Ham's mallet gift to Miles that he said could fit into any pocket and not take up any space. Miguel's digital assistant is Lila, voiced by Greta Lee, and she calls in Spider-Woman Jessica Drew, voiced by Issa Rae. Her yellow goggles match the shape of her yellow eyepieces in the comics. Overall, she has the red, black, and yellow color scheme like she does. And yes, she is pregnant.
Are you,
Oh, this? We don't know the sex yet. My husband wants it to be a surprise. He's really corny, but so hot.
Jessica Drew is pregnant in the comics leading up to the Secret Wars event, and we do not meet her husband in this movie. Presumably, we will meet this interesting character in the third movie, Beyond the Spider-Verse, coming next year. Now, when the Vulture falls, he hits a beam, and then text says, Notte notte, which is Italian for night night. And the three of them stop the helicopter from crashing over the bystanders, and one looks up at it and says, yeah, I think it's a Banksy, which is a callback to the same exact soundbite from the 2018 film, the vocal cameo by Post Malone.
Yeah, I think it's a Banksy.
So Captain Stacy holds his daughter at gunpoint, and she unmasks herself, and the watercolor brushstrokes smear down behind them. Just a cool way of showing their whole world melting. Miguel and Jess invite Gwen out of pity to join the Spider Society, and they leave through these hexagonal portals, hexagons being a recurring shape in the MCU to show rifts through space and through dimensions. So on to Earth 1610, Brooklyn. There's a food cart for Mother Shuckers. I love it. We follow the Spot, voiced by Jason Schwartzman, as he robs the ATM of a bodega. As he passes the bodega register, it reads, "Game over!" So the Spot peels off one of his oozy ink dots to try to open a portal into this ATM, but he fails. At one point, he runs his own hand to the side and he hurts his knuckles. But when he finally reaches in, notice how the $100 bill has a different face than Benjamin Franklin? This might be director Joaquin Dos Santos, I'm not exactly sure. And in addition to calling it an ATM machine, the Spot says PIN number, which is also redundant since N stands for number already. Now, Miles cuts away from this to recap the past year. The sequel, I believe, is set 1 year and 4 months after the first movie. Among the villains he fights appears to be the Marvel villain Leapfrog. He says he hosted Jeopardy with categories including arachnidiums, spider sense and sensibility, the wide web world, and Thwibbit. We learn he endorsed baby powder, which is a callback to Peter B. Parker's advice in the first film to use baby powder to get in and out of the suit. Then he has to apologize in a YouTube video. And then we see Miles adding to his No Expectations wall art mural all of his friends from the 2018 film. I love how throughout this movie, Uncle Aaron keeps coming back and back and back just to remind us how important he is to Miles' life and set up the big twist in the final act of this movie. This fight with the Spot causes him to be late to his parent-teacher conference, flying through portals in the background and catching a goose, which is a callback to when Miles got stuck to 2 pigeons in the first movie. And when they fly through a blue portal, following them is another bagel, the symbol of Jonathan Owen's pain and his rage toward Miles. I like how on Jefferson's phone text history, he wrote in all caps, "This is imporkage," and then he tried to correct Imforfkent, and then finally gets it right, important.
There's so many small details in this movie. So there was one that I saw, or that I thought I saw the first time through when they were having their battle, where there is a construction worker who's trying to get some water out of his water bottle, and suddenly from a spot, a whole bunch of water is just flooded on top of him.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I noticed that one.
I don't think he's going to point it out. Maybe he because it's not important. So
No.
I don't know why he would point
it's
that
just
out.
funny little things like that's what I really love about animation. Sometimes is like the animators can put little jokes in there and stuff.
Exactly.
And some of it is just like purposeful for Easter eggs for the audience. And I really feel like some of it is just because it tickles them.
Miles fights with the Spot on a rooftop, dodging his punches and kicks. At one point, squeezing between a punch and a kick, essentially threading the needle. I love it. Miles pats the Spot on the head, and red text reads, "Good cow," because with all the spots, he looks like a Dalmatian and a cow. And then Miles and the Spot tumble into the Foam Party Cafe, having a literal foam party with all the suds and bubbles and that goose squawking around. This is the same cafe that Jefferson pointed out at the beginning of the 2018 film, the one with the long line, as the neighborhood was being gentrified. Miles returns to his Brooklyn Visions Academy dorm room, where his roommate remains, Hailee, who is Miles' buddy in the Ultimate Comics, but this character in the 2018 film had all of his dialogue cut. The character has now been given lines and aged up in physique and in voice.
I'm not your guy in the chair.
Are those my Jordans?
I can't help it if we're the same size.
Guy in the chair, a reference to Ned Leeds, Jacob Batalon's character in the MCU, being Tom Holland, Peter Parker's guy in the chair in Spider-Man Homecoming, and the character of Ned in the MCU was really just based off of Genki Lee from the Ultimate Comics. Now, Genki Lee is voiced in this movie by Peter Sohn, director of Pixar's Elemental, and is also the voice of Socks in Pixar's Lightyear, since one of the co-directors of this movie is Kent Powers, director of Pixar's Soul. I like how they just keep it in the family, even though Peter Sohn's Elemental is going to be in direct competition with Across the Spider-Verse in the month of June at the box office. At the end of the day, all these animators just love and respect each other. I love it.
So
Miles
sweet.
finally arrives at the parent-teacher conference, where his teacher is voiced by Rachel Dratch.
Miles's grades are pretty good. A in AP Physics.
That's my little man.
And a B in Spanish.
What?
Ooh, okay.
Miles.
Are you trying to
Mira,
kill
that's
your
why I'm
mother?
so
Okay.
I love how Jefferson
So sidebar, this principal, when she was moving around and doing her little gesticulations and stuff, that was when I realized while watching this just how good the physical animation is, because there were so many instances in this film where the body language felt very real to life.
Well, even just watching that bit and like when the little thing, that ornament thing fell down and just the minor detail of her just looking at it and the way she looked at it, I'm like, they just have all the expressions and like micro expressions and little movements down pat.
Yeah. That moment when Miles is deciding whether or not to go through the portal and chase Gwen.
Yeah.
The way he gets up, the way he like starts up his run and goes after the portal, even that looked realistic.
Yeah.
Like those small details I actually really appreciated.
tries to place that cat-themed desk ornament back together, but he fails. The teacher's eyes just dart over, but she just keeps talking anyway. It's kind of like in Iron Man 2 when Tony Stark obsesses over that thing on his desk. We learn that Miles is excelling at AP Physics because, like the MCU Peter Parker, it just helps any Spider-Man to know physics and trajectories and motion. But Miles B in Spanish is met with outrage from his Puerto Rican mother, and when she snaps, it forms a little Puerto Rican flag.
Oh,
like
yeah,
the sting
Oh, I didn't catch
hits
that.
him with the
That's
full
so
might of his Puerto
cool.
Rican heritage. So Miles leaves the guidance counselor's
do
office
you
to
catch
rejoin his fight
that?
with the Spot, which tumbles into Wilson Fisk's old Alchemex Collider site, the location of the showdown of the 2018 film, but it's now under construction with this canopy made of reflective panels, reminding me of the dome that was constructed over the Chernobyl site. Based on this pardon our mess sign, it looks like Alchemex are the ones actually cleaning it up. Maybe they're continuing to have some nefarious plans here. Like, you would think the government would be like, you guys aren't allowed anywhere near this. So the Spot explains his backstory, and we see the Earth 42 spider that bit Miles, but in its Earth 42 reality, right before it left, it was going to bite alternate Miles. You can see his hair in braids. This is foreshadowing
what?
the Miles we see in the third act of the movie, the big twist, telling us that in that reality, it was not going to be a Peter Parker who got bit, it was going to be a Miles Morales. The Spot reveals that he was the one who got struck with that hilarious bagel action word. I love that they brought this guy back. So between Owen being the source of Spider 42 coming into 1610 and Miles being the source of the bagel incident, they really did create each other. The Spot trips and he kicks himself in the
I got
butt through a
goosebumps.
portal. It looks like one of the pieces.
Sorry?
I got goosebumps just with that revelation, because like we had a live stream this morning and someone was saying like, oh, you know, maybe the fact that we didn't see any other Miles as Spider-Man, that's Spider-Man, I don't know, whatever it is, but maybe that meant that Miles was never supposed to be a Spider-Man, but then seeing that and seeing how actually he was
Just not the dimension that we got.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it was always meant to be, and in some way it kind of it worked itself out, even though it was in an alternate reality, an alternate universe. You know?
From the hex tiles, kind of looks like the rectangular USB drive from the first film. The trip mirrors Miles tripping on his shoelaces when he was running across the rooftop for his jump test. That is what broke the USB drive, and it kind of was the embarrassment early in his arc that motivated the rest of his story. So similarly for the Spot in this movie, his embarrassment here is really what unlocks the next stage of his hero's journey. He finds himself in this inky hole realm where all the dark matter has left his body, creating all these portals into the multiverse. The first he looks into is this classic animation universe from the 1940s with Ben Day Dot. There's a woman in a black and white polka dot blouse who hits him with her purse, her blouse matching the pattern of his skin. On the cinema marquee is a movie titled The Tall Man, coming soon. Then he looks into the Lego universe, calling back Lord Miller's work on the Lego movies. We'll come back to this one. Then he drops by Chinatown of Earth 688 with Ms. Chen from Venom and Venom Let There Be Carnage.
What do you want? I'm robbing you because I'm a bad guy.
I love how unfazed Ms. Chen is. And the brand of gum he steals, if you look closely, is
Venomint.
Brock's Venomint, a reference to Eddie Brock, Venom. And this establishes Sony's Venom movies as Universe 688 and their system of organizing this. Spot looks at his hands and says, "The power of the multiverse in the palm of my hand," a nod to Doc Ock's line in Spider-Man 2 in 2004.
Oh, that's right.
Power of the sun in the palm of my hand.
Which he echoes in Spider-Man No Way Home.
The power of the sun in the palm of my hand.
Back in the Legoverse, we see a text box, which is actually in the shape of a red Lego brick, labeling this Earth 13122. This Peter Parker is voiced by Nick Novicki. There's a Lego J. Jonah Jameson in this Daily Bugle office, and they use J.K. Simmons' audio from the 2002 Sam Raimi film when he says,
"Tomorrow morning, Spider-Man, page 1 with a decent picture this time."
So back in 1610, Miles cannot thwip when he's carrying cake boxes, so he has to ride a crowded train. Kind of like Tobey Maguire Peter Parker trying to pizza time in Spider-Man 2 and having to take the elevator afterward. Miles has to hop off the track to quickly zap the villain, the Armadillo, and then Miles foils a thief stealing Nikes. He passes a bunch of gawkers, including this smiling dumbass with glasses. This is an aged up version of that goofy student who smiles at Miles in the Visions Academy in the first film. Miles shows up late with the cakes to the rooftop party, having changed into his basketball jersey, number 42, Miles' number. The cakes are now wrecked. His heartfelt messages spelling out just, "I'm not," and then proud. Jeff and Rio complain that Genki calls them by their first name, so later when Gwen does it, they really cringe. Miles refers to his friends Peter and Gwanda using Gwen's fake name that she gave him in the first film. Miles returns to his room where boxing gloves hang by the door, again reminding us of his boxing lessons with Uncle Aaron. There's also a Michelle Obama campaign sticker suggesting that in 1610 she was the Obama who held, or at least sought, public office. Whereas before it was Sunflower, the hot track of this sequel is Hummingbird by Metro Boomin and James Blake, which Miles chills out to here. Remember, the 2018 film ended with Miles listening to Post Malone's Sunflower as Gwen opened that portal over his bed and asked if he has a minute, and this scene picks up with a similar moment, just like that. But a year has passed since the events of the first film, and notice how throughout this movie, Miles has been aged up a bit. A longer face, he's a bit taller, and he has longer hair. Floating around his room is a bunch of trading cards with these red and white balls on them. These are for Teriyakimon, the 1610 version of Pokemon. And when they're sitting on the bed, floating past is a framed photo of Miles with his Uncle Aaron, his mentor figure, who was shot by Kingpin in the 2018 film. And on Miles' shelf is an RC Spider-Mobile, which 1610 Peter had a life-size version of in the 2018 film. And above that, the specific photo of Miles' dad Jefferson and his brother Aaron that Jefferson had as his phone background, and this exact photo was framed in Aaron's apartment. So this is probably something Miles found in his uncle's apartment and moved to his bedroom. Also on the shelf on the left side of frame, Miles has this wooden moose. This is actually an Easter egg for Lord Miller's 2021 film Mitchells vs. Machines. This moose is a hugely important item to the Mitchell family in that movie. Gwen finds Miles' sketchbook. Our man is lucky that she didn't see any of the other drawings he probably drew of her in this, but over on the left, he kept a bus ticket stub, Hudson Valley Explorer Schenectady to Brooklyn Central. This was the bus ride home that they took after Gwen saved them from Olivia Octavius in the forest in the 2018 film. So Miles has been scrapbooking his relationship with her. Miles and Gwen swing from construction crane to construction crane, just like Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man does at the climax of the 2012 Amazing Spider-Man film, as they thread the needle between buses. Notice how this whole block is just colored in pink and teal hues, a way of showing how Gwen's colors are tinting and shading this reality as her influence spreads throughout it. There's this awesome point of view shot from the truck.
Yo, I knew there was a lot of details, but golly. Erik Voss's audio clips are obviously being cut together, and they're being cut together very well because it sounds like he's just not taking a breath. It doesn't sound as edited as, you know, like my ears are trained to hear that. And sometimes I can hear when the edits happen. This is strung together so well that it just sounds like a running sentence or several sentences without taking a moment to breathe. And it's like, whoa. That bedroom alone has so much information in it. I'm like, how did you, all the cross-referencing that the people at New Rockstars have to do, or Erik Voss, like, there's a lot of cross-referencing happening to find out every nook and cranny. I'm wondering if they even got it all.
No, there's so much. Like I saw this and I was like, this is 40 minutes. That's long, but I feel like it could be longer.
Yeah. No, easily. It could be longer, yeah.
Driver, Miles swings on the right side, reflected in both mirrors, and then we turn to the right side mirrors as he flies behind the truck. And the exclamation points from his scream chase him, just like the ah from his fall in the 2018 film, and the woo in the final act. I just love how Miles stays behind Gwen throughout this whole sequence, hiding his clumsy collisions and trying to come off as more confident than he really is. Really, though, just copying Gwen's moves, like hastily tying his web to his ankle. He tries to claim that he's learned just as much as she has, but really he's just actively learning in this moment from her. They pass the hot dog vendor and we see the action word take on the hot dog swipe, but then Miles whips money to the vendor's chest. If you look closely, this is an alternate universe $25 bill. I love this. There's just a kid who mindlessly licks the window of the train with a big old smile. I think he's my favorite character in this movie. I can watch him on loop. This is just so funny to me. Gwen plants a drone to spy on the Spot's apartment. Above it, I love this, is a billboard with a bagel. All of it, always, all over the place. A 1610 version of the bagel-themed Everything Everywhere All at Once. This movie's animators clearly acknowledging the bagel parallel with Jonathan Ohm. Miles and Gwen look out at the city, sitting upside down from the Williamsburg Bank building, creating such a trippy but great visual. Gwen says,
in every other universe, Gwen Stacy falls for Spider-Man. And in every other universe, it doesn't end well.
Not only is she referring to Earth 65 Peter's death as the lizard, she's also referring to the universes where Gwen Stacy famously dies in the Death of Gwen Stacy arc, like we saw with Emma Stone in The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Why would you?
I'm still disturbed by that.
Grape drink, a nod to my favorite Dave Chappelle bit.
A lot of black people don't have the privilege of knowing about grape juice because they have grape drink. It's not the same formula.
After Miles' parents scare off Gwen, we get this heartfelt moment between Miles and his mother, Rio. The city they look out on has incomplete sketch lines in the distant background for the buildings, kind of in the haze of the city. It's just a really cool detail to suggest that the Manhattan skyline is a part of New York that Miles might not know as well, because really his home neighborhood is Brooklyn. Rio gives Miles the advice that he really needs for this whole film, saying that she hopes her son never lets any one of those big, fancy, important places he's going to be in tell him that he doesn't belong there. I think all of us can relate to feeling like an imposter or a mistake or told that we're not ready for the big leagues. And I think the third Spider-Verse movie will prove that Miles' anomalistic status is actually the rule all Spider people should live by. But it's just sad to think that this moment with Rio is the last time in this movie Miles will talk to his home reality mother. And his chat with Jeff earlier might be the last time he talks to his dad from any reality. Miles changed his wardrobe as he descends the fire escape, unzipping his pants on the ground, and seeing a dog walker and a dog, and then awkwardly re-zipping his pants back up. Okay, then to Owen's apartment. We see from photographs that he was once a long-haired and bearded colleague to Liv Octavius. His spider containers are labeled Earth 42. This was the spider that bit Miles, which is now deceased because Miles swatted and killed it. But there are other containers labeled 14512, that's Penny Parker's universe, 333, 90214, that is Spider-Man Noir's universe, and 19925. This is a universe supposedly written by a bot. Miles jumps in after Gwen into the portal tunnel and lands in Earth 50101, Mumbattan, a cross between Mumbai and Manhattan. From above, its geography looks like the island of Manhattan, but greener, and what we think are the rivers are actually just the city's lower levels. The artist designed Mumbattan to keep going down and down and down, a contrast to 1610 and Nueva York, where the city just goes up and up and up. In Mumbattan, instead of the trains running on top of the tracks, the cars hang below from the rail above them.
I didn't notice that.
You can see signs for Zomato, which is a restaurant group in India. And here
caught
we meet Pav. Privateer Prabhakar, Spider-Man India from Earth 50101 is voiced by Karen Sony, aka Dopinder from the Deadpool films. He spins his web shooter on a spindle like a yo-yo. It looks so cool. All the action words in 50101 are in Hindi. Like at one point we see whip in Hindi, and when Privateer hits the spot in the back of the head, it makes this Hindi word dadak, which translates to roughly bang or slam. And Privateer corrects Miles on the common American chai tea mix-up.
I love chai tea. What did you just say? Chai tea, chai means tea, bro. You're saying tea.
And I love how
I thought about this afterwards. So, isn't there a flavor called chai in the States?
Yes. So technically, when we think of chai, right? Chai is a specific type of tea. It's a spiced tea that is very common in India, and like every family has their own very specific recipe, but
Sure.
it normally involves like ginger and cinnamon or any other spices. You guys tell me in the comments what you use.
But it's a flavor.
But I think it also does just mean tea.
Well, in India, sure, but I'm saying in the Western world, chai is a flavor.
Chai is a specific type of
Yeah.
tea, like a flavor. You're right, yes. But he's educating him so that he doesn't sound like a dumbass when he's out and about in the
India.
world and in India.
Miles is so distracted, he spills the tea. It flows from the cup
spills
onto the
the
table.
tea.
Also, you could consider this a callback to Miles correcting the spot on ATM machine, which is also redundant. The M stands for machine already. So as these three fight the spot in Mumbattan, we see that his dark matter has filled in more of his body so that
Yes.
he's gradually going more from white to black throughout this movie. He makes it to the Mumbattan Alchemix lab for its collider, and Miles tries to supercharge the barrier with this new move that he's working on, but Hobie Brown arrives. Spider-Punk, voiced by Daniel Kaluuya.
I have a question for the audience, for the Indian audience. Is the yo-yo a part of Indian culture and I just don't know about it? Because I have never heard anything in reference to yo-yos.
Yeah.
In India. While I was in India, I didn't see one person use a goddamn yo-yo. So I watched a movie some ages back. I forgot what it was. It was kind of like after Dangerous Minds had come out. There was a series of high school films, comedy and drama, that arrived. And in one of those movies, this guy was substitute teaching at a school, and he said the yo-yo came from the Philippines and was used as a weapon, which...
You can.
But
Have you ever got hit in the face by a yo-yo going up full speed? It hurts.
all I'm saying is, that's based on a movie.
Right.
And so I don't know how factual that is.
Well,
that-
the only time I've ever seen a yo-yo like that used on the string like that is I think it's like a Taiwanese yo-yo or a Chinese yo-yo.
Okay.
Where you actually use a string and two sticks.
Okay, gotcha.
And you can do like tricks on it. It's really cool.
He looks so cool in this movie, made up of different textures of
Yeah, I
paper,
love it.
newspapers, and posters, but a lot
Very
of it
punk.
is in the speed at which he moves. In the 2018 film, remember, Miles was initially animated on 2s, which means 12 frames per second instead of the normal 24 frames per second, giving him a more staggered, choppier movement. By the end of the movie, he was animated on 1s to show his evolution and do smoother, more confident swings in 24 frames per second. Hobie in this movie is deliberately animated, I guess you'd say on 4s? It looks like 6 frames per second. Really, really choppy movement, but intentionally staggered. A punk rock poster come to life. I love how this reflects Hobie as a character, a spider variant who makes a choice of being out of step with the other spider people, even more grounded in his home medium than Miles was. It shows Miles that there's another way to exist in this multiverse, an arguably more powerful way, because it forces the viewer to look at every single pose that you strike. Hobie says,
I'm a role model, I was briefly a runway model. I hate the AM, I hate the PM, I hate labels.
Yeah, hate the PM. A bit of wordplay there, because wordplay is always very common in the Cockney slang, like later we see him say Scooby-Doo, meaning clue. But by PM, yes, he's saying he hates the time of day in the afternoon, but
And
also
the Prime
he hates
Minister.
the PM as in the Prime Minister.
I had a hard time hearing, decoding everything he was saying. When he said that line, I only heard PM, and I thought he was just talking about the Prime Minister. I wasn't thinking he was talking about the evening time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's funny because I didn't actually until now realize that he could have also been talking about the Prime Minister.
Yeah, I just took it as I took it as rebel. That subtitle I don't remember being there in the movie. I don't think it was.
No, it wasn't.
And so when he said I hate the AM, I didn't actually hear that part.
Yeah, it was sometimes difficult to hear him because of like all of the loud music behind him and stuff.
Off camera, I told you after we saw the film, because I watched it twice. I watched it once with Laquan and I watched it with ACHARA. There was a bit of Nolan going on with the audio. Like the very beginning, you can't hear every bit of dialogue with supreme clarity from Gwen. Like some of it is kind of under the music. You only do that by design in an animation, because animation is comprised, like all that audio is
voiceover.
It's like all of that is I would argue more constructed than you would with a regular movie.
Yeah, yeah.
And so anything you have a hard time hearing, that was on purpose, as far as I could tell.
The spot activates the collider and fuses with the dark matter, and Miles' consciousness briefly overlaps with Jonathan Owen's. He sees the black and white future of Owen's plans to absorb all of reality and cause the deaths of police captains, with Inspector Singh, Gayatri's father, and Miles' dad, Captain Morales, flickering back and forth as they rush to save a kid. So when Miles saves Singh, in his mind, he's saving his own dad, but both are considered canon events that Miguel O'Hara wants to play out. The Alchemix building collapses, raining rubble all over the city, and the four leap into action. Privateer sees Gayatri on a double-decker bus on the bridge, recalling MCU Peter Parker's girlfriend MJ in a double-decker bus on Tower Bridge in Spider-Man Far From Home in the MCU. Everyone ends up getting saved. It's an awesome scene, but Miles disrupting the canon event of Inspector Singh's death causes dark matter to consume the city. Jessica Drew arrives with the team to contain it. She takes the rest back to Nueva York, Earth 928, Spider Society HQ. And I just love the reveal that initially it's all upside down, with Miles and the rest on the bottom side of the elevator lift. It's an interesting directional inversion of that great moment in the 2018 film where Miles dives, but they invert the shot to make it look like a triumphant rise. Here it's the opposite. Miles is technically rising and going up the skyscraper, but because he's upside down, it feels like a descent into hell, because this is not a good place where Miles is going. But hey, we get to meet a ton of spider things. The animators say they created 280 spider people for this movie. We've already met a dozen or so, but the majority of ones in this HQ are really just non-specific variants of different shapes and suit designs. I'm just gonna cover these specific references to ones known from the comics and other media. So as they arrive, we meet Malala Windsor, Spider UK from Earth 835.
I thought there was more than 280 just looking at it.
It felt like a lot.
It looked like way more. And it's just because of the way they were used. I never knew if they were repeating Spider-Men. You know, like when Miles was being surrounded by all the Spider-Men as Miguel was trying to basically create that intervention.
Yeah.
I didn't know if there were new ones there. You know, like every few seconds in that scene, I was seeing new Spider-Man. So 280 actually sounds small to me, given just how haphazard that whole sequence was.
Yeah.
Haphazard in, deliberately. You know what I mean?
Chaotic.
Say again?
Chaotic.
Chaotic, yeah.
Media. So as they arrive, we meet Malala Windsor, Spider UK from Earth 835. She's voiced by Sophia Barclay. She says, "Anyone spot the spot?" And Jess gets annoyed and asks if anyone else's jokes, and we see yellow text boxes showing everyone else's jokes. See spot run? X marks the weird looking bad guy. Did you say quip or thwip? We need to run a spot check. He could be in any hole in the world. Puns are my weak spot. He's probably hiding in some hole in the wall. Hey, way to put us on the spot, mate. This search is starting to peter out. I hate it. And as the camera glides through the main hall of the HQ, we pass the black and yellow Spider Armor Mark II sitting on the left there. Then a steampunky looking one with these extra appendages. This is Maybelle Riley, Lady Spider from Earth 803. There's a traffic cop Spider-Man. And then there's a bombastic Bagman. We'll talk about him a little bit later. Then on the walkway, Miles passes the Spider Armor Mark III, and then they pass Peter Parked Car of Earth 53931, and then dropping into him, Spider Side of Earth 616. This is a thick boy clone of 616 Peter. Also, the Last Stand Peter Parker of Earth 312500. This is the Peter with a high collar jacket who gets killed in the Last Stand run and exists alongside Ezekiel Sims. Then Peter of Earth 13122. That's the Lego universe that we saw earlier. You can actually see the little Lego man sitting on top of the windshield there. And then Tarantula of Earth 1610A. 16A being a side universe to Miles' universe of 1610. Then they meet the moody and dramatic Ben Reilly Spider-Man, aka the Scarlet Spider from Earth 94, voiced by Andy Samberg. It's mentioned here that he's a clone because yes, he is from the Clone Saga, and yes, he's got a lot of baggage. Then they meet the Web Slinger, a cowboy Spider-Man from Earth 31913, voiced by Taron Killam, and his horse Widow, who's also in a mask. Lila takes them on the tour of all the multiversal anomaly villains who have been captured. She mentions several Doc Ox, a Mysterio, also a Mysterio, and then a video game guy section. In between them is the Insomniac Spider-Man of Earth 1048. That's the universe of the PS4 games. And he asks,
I didn't know
are you talking to me? And it's the voice of Yuri Lowenthal, who voices Peter in those Insomniac games. There's an interesting villain named Typeface who says, "Go to Helvetica."
Yeah,
in the 2018 movie, they changed all the New York City public transit signs from the Helvetica typeface that it's in the real world to Arial, which Microsoft introduced in the early 90s as an alternative to Helvetica. So this might just be an inside joke with these animators. They might just really hate Helvetica and prefer Arial. And I can tell you, as someone who writes all my scripts in Arial for YouTube, Arial is much nicer because it takes up less space on the page. So that might be it.
I
then
like
Lila mentions
Helvetica.
an interesting Craven, a boring Rhino, and then, oh my God, a Prowler, a cameo by Donald Glover in live action. Hobie claims he was the one who caught him himself, and Glover says, "I slipped." Remember, Glover played Aaron Davis in the live action MCU in Spider-Man Homecoming in 2017, and in that movie he referenced having a nephew who lives in that area, and in a deleted scene calls him Miles. Glover also cameoed in the 2018 Spider-Verse film from his scene in NBC's Community when Troy wears Spider-Man PJs. It's possible that this could be the same Aaron from the MCU just years after Homecoming. It is just wild to see a live-action character sharing the screen with animated ones like Mary Poppins or Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and it increases the likelihood that this series in the next movie may introduce a live-action Miles Morales who will be in the MCU.
Okay, I was waiting for him to say something about that, about Beyond the Spider-Verse, because I was wondering if they were going to bring back in some of the live-action Spider-Men that we're already familiar with. You know?
I mean,
they showed Andrew Garfield, they showed Tobey Maguire, they didn't show Tom Holland.
Yeah.
But like, from what I was hearing from one of the directors himself, it's like Beyond the Spider-Verse gets even crazier.
Oh my God.
And so like what can you do?
Yeah, what else can you do? Like, yeah, that makes sense. That is actually an interesting direction to go, because then we're just almost like passing on the baton, right? From the animation and this animated Miles Morales into like, and now you've got the live action one that we can see going forward, maybe with Tom Holland or maybe doing his own thing like Venom.
What I wonder about is, because the whole thing with Across the Spider-Verse is breaking more rules, right?
Right.
The first film already established a breaking of rules with how you tell a story in film. And this one went even further, which we'll get more into in the live stream spoiler talk. But if you're trying to break more rules, then you would go more the direction of Roger Rabbit. So my question then is, how do you guys feel if you have a substantial amount of Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, or Tom Holland, any of those three, or even a live-action Miles Morales, for a substantial amount of Beyond the Spider-Verse, when it starts out as an animated film, like, how do you feel if you have a substantial amount of live-action people in there? Does it bother you, or do you just go with it? There's so much craziness happening in these movies anyway. Like, it would not surprise me if that started to have a takeover in the third installment.
Yeah, I feel like for me personally, I think it's cool when it's just like a little cameo or like a scene or two.
Yeah.
But if like suddenly the whole movie became a live action, I'd be like, this isn't what I signed up for. I signed up for like the coolness and prettiness of...
No, yeah, but like, it doesn't have to be that the world is live action. It can be that the world is animated. You just have live action actors now.
Okay. I don't know.
Okay.
And in the Sonyverse, Miles meets Margot Kess, aka Spider-Bite from Earth 22191, voiced by Amanda Stenberg. She is a digital avatar, and her physical body is back at home, where she has a poster, "We Are Incognito," with a Guy Fawkes logo, an alternate version of the hacker group Anonymous. All these anomalies are sent to the Go Home machine.
I would love to know how many of these Spider-Men are made up for this movie.
DNA, which is important. On their way in to see Miguel, Hobie rips a piece of tech out of the wall, joking, "I bet this doesn't do anything." But it sets up how later he's able to engineer his own multiverse watch for Gwen to use. Like, notice as they continue to walk through, he keeps swiping more and more stuff to use for it. Around Miguel's lab are futuristic versions of tech from villains Miguel has defeated by the year 2099, including the claw of a Prowler, the arms of Doc Ock, and the glider of Green Goblin, showing how he must use scraps of their tech to continue building his technology. Miles tries to connect with Miguel by offering him empanadas, but Miguel throws the food back in his face and responds in a curt, more technical Spanish than Miles' folksier Puerto Rican Brooklyn slang. Peter B. Parker returns, along with his new baby daughter, Mayday Parker, who has a baby day pass, telling us that Jessica Drew gave Miles a wristband that's normally for babies. So Miguel launches into his big explanation, first depicting all of reality as a glowing white vine with branches. Imagery that I
so
think is
similar
just
to
like
something
the
else we've
sacred timeline
seen.
of the MCU, which split into
that was quite obvious, yeah.
It's now a messy web, last seen in the post-credit scene of Ant-Man the Wasp Quantumania. It's clear that this movie is trying to establish the animated Spider-Verse as part of the live-action Marvel multiverse from the MCU. But over this white vine, straight red lasers beam out to represent the Spider-Verse. Miguel O'Hara refers to this as the web of life and destiny, which is the term in the comics, or as he says here, arachno-humanoid polymultiverse. The nodes represent canon events, and in the first one we see 6 different comics moments when a spider bite occurred, including an early one where Peter is wearing the yellow vest. Behind that, to the right, are various moments Peter and MJ connect, including Kirsten Dunst, Mary Jane, kissing Tobey Maguire Peter in the rain from the 2002 film. Then to the left, the next nodes that Miguel refers to as very, very bad, shows 6 moments the Venom symbiote overtook Eddie Brock in the comics. It's fascinating that Miguel categorizes the creation of Venom as a canon event in the life of every Spider-Person. To me, this kind of feels like Sony's trying to make Venom as important as possible to their Spider-Verse franchise, which also would be kind of weird because their 2 Venom movies so far removed the Spider-Man step from the Venom origin. But going forward, the implication here seems to be that every Peter, Miles, Gwen, or whoever will spawn a symbiote-enriched rival that will plague their lives. Then Miguel takes us through what I'm going to call Death Alley, all the mentor figures that the Spider people have lost. Miles sees a projection of his loss of Uncle Aaron from the first film, and Miguel singles out what he calls Event ASM 90, which is a nod to the Amazing Spider-Man number 90, in which George Stacy goes to save a kid. We actually see the same comics art of those panels here during Spider-Man's fight with Doc Ock that ends up taking George's life. I believe it's 31 issues after this, Amazing Spider-Man 121, that is the death of Gwen Stacy, his daughter. Miles turns over to a parallel moment, a projection of Andrew freaking Garfield, Peter Parker, crying over the body of Dennis Leary, Captain Stacy from 2012's Amazing Spider-Man film when George was killed by Reese Ifan's version of the Lizard, Dr. Connors. And again, since all these Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield moments connect to the MCU by association, this animated Spider-Man film is giving us a codified understanding of how the Spider-Verse is all connected, including to the MCU. Miguel confesses that he tried to bypass.
So he didn't address the nomenclature. It's called a canon event.
Yes.
I'm just wondering if that specific word was chosen because of things being canon in the MCU or in comic lore and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, isn't it what is it called in the MCU? I wanted to say Nexus event, but
yeah.
Is that what it's called? Because there's Nexus beings and I forget.
I don't remember. Every time he said canon event, that's what I was thinking of. It's just like lore in general with like books or whatever. It's like, oh, that's not considered canon anymore in Star Wars, you know, stuff like that.
I think that's what they're trying to say. Like, it's something that absolutely has to happen to every Spider-Man.
Past a canon event of his variant's death in a reality so that he could be happy in a reality with his daughter Gabriella, but eventually that reality erased around him. This may remind you of the logic of what's called
Doctor Strange.
Points.
Oh, that's what I was, absolute
world,
points.
But it just sounds like different terms for the same kind of idea. Peter B. Parker explains the necessary loss of Uncle Ben, and in one node portal, we see Cliff Robertson, Uncle Ben, dying from the 2002 Sam Raimi film, and Tobey Maguire, Peter Parker crying over him. But to the right of that is the animated spectacular Spider-Man, the one voiced by Josh Keaton, in the moment his Uncle Ben died, and then on the far right is Uncle Ben's death from the cutscene of the PS4 game. Josh Keaton actually joins the other Spider people in this intervention, saying, "I know it's hard, but it's the truth, Miles." When Miguel traps Miles in this red energy field, Hobie holds out his hand's palms, calling back his advice to Miles back in Mumbattan to use the palms instead of the fingertips. And so when Miles
I'm surprised you didn't reference What If, because Doctor Strange experienced the same thing that Miguel did. No, he referenced the what?
Well, he showed that clip from What If and Absolute Points.
Right, he mentioned the absolute point, but he didn't show the destruction, which is a parallel between you know what happened with Doctor Strange, who ends up living for a ridiculous amount of time in isolation. And Miguel
listens to him and blasts out of the cage, and all the other Spider people chase after him. Hobie's like, "Nah, I'm out," and he leaves back through a portal and tosses his watch behind. I'm telling you, as we look ahead to Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse, Hobie Brown is a very important character and a potential mentor to Miles Morales that none of the other characters are. So Miguel alerts the Spider Society. In this cafeteria, one of them's reading a newspaper with an opinion page headline, "Are Cats Man's Best Friend?" They all break into groups of 3, recreating the pointing meme from the post-credit scene of the 2018 film, which of course was repeated in the live-action Spider-Man No Way Home. I just love the idea that 3 is kind of a magic number for these Spider people to stump them into confusion like this. The group closest to us includes the white logo PS4 game Advanced Suit Spider-Man, and next to him is Spider-Man Unlimited from the late 90s animated series. And then entering Sector 4 is this dude.
Do I have web on my face? What's the deal?
This is Spider-Man 2211, aka Max Bourne from Earth 9500, an associate of Miguel O'Hara in the 90s comics. And Miles clings to his back, kind of like Aladdin does with that bodybuilder when he flees the guards in the chase sequence in that movie. He falls down and they're piling onto him like white blood cells. One of them definitely the gray armored Spider Armor Mark 1. And then Spider Cat, who coughs up a web furball on his face. And notice how Spider Cat's gizmo is latched to its tail. Miles says,
I didn't catch that.
Back to Peter B. Parker when they meet the other 3 eccentric Spider people in the 2018 film.
This could literally not get any weirder.
It can get weird.
And then there's Patarker, aka Spider Rex. When he thwips, it's T-Whip. Miles gets hit by
T-Whip.
Spider-Man, the really small one, and then by Spider Monkey. Then the Web Slinger, Cowboy Spider-Man from the Wild West universe and the Ultimate Animated series. He fires bullets from his revolver. Miles and Web Slinger end up in a Clint Eastwood-style duel. The frame goes to a 2:9:3:1 aspect ratio like it does in Westerns, and Miles gets a quick draw with a thwip. And then we get this moment.
And then I looked at my uncle and...
let me guess. He died?
I love it. On the walls of this therapy office is an ink blot test that, naturally, to us and to all these characters, looks like a spider. There's also a diploma from Ditko University, a nod to Spider-Man co-creator Steve Ditko, and it names this therapist Spider-Man Ezekiel Sims, who is the old man Spider-Man from the comics. So since he's the oldest of them, he probably is the wisest and has the most therapeutic wisdom to be able to give them. Peter B. Parker asks Miguel to take a photo of he and Mayday's first chase together. Miguel blows him off, but Mayday whips the button of the phone to take the selfie. During the chase, Miles slides into the legs of Flash Thompson Spider-Man, aka Captain Spider. He wears the Letterman jacket. Miles swings ahead of the bombastic Bagman. This is from the comics when Peter gets stuck in the Fantastic Four's Baxter building and has to borrow one of their suits and wears a brown paper bag over his head to disguise himself. When Miles twists the bag around on his head, you can see the CMYK Ben-Day dots in his outline staying the same size. We also, of course, see Spider-Man from the Mangaverse. Miles pushes him away. Miles gallops on the horse Widow past the anomalies who cheer him on while booing Miguel and the others. Miles takes Webslinger's hat and stuffs it in the face of Spider-Wolf. Then Miles passes Charlotte Weber, the Sun Spider, who has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome that affects her joints and connective tissues, so she uses a wheelchair and crutches. She's voiced by Danielle Perez. The 1967 Spider-Man from the animated series returns from the 2018 movie post-credit scene, voiced by Yorma Tacone. And then Miles runs through a kind of danger room with past villains, the Sinister Six from the 90s animated series. We see Doc Ock, Shocker, Goblin, and the rest. Then Miles dives out of the skyscraper. A cyborg Spider-Woman follows, along with a Canadian Spider-Woman with a hockey stick that Chibi Spider-Man rides. Miles drops into the underworld in Nueva York, and Peter B. Parker tries to get him to hold Mayday, saying Miles is the reason he had a kid. Reminds us of that moment in the 2018 film when, remember, Peter B. Parker had split up with his MJ because he didn't want to have kids, but upon meeting Miles and seeing him kick ass, he realized, wait, do I want kids now? Miguel chases Miles on—
That scene was crucial for me. That scene between Peter B. Parker and Miles Morales, because I was actually quite unhappy with how Peter B. Parker was acting in that scene when Miles Morales was feeling confined like a cat in a corner.
Yeah.
And he's trying to he's part of the intervention, and I'm like, why? This is not my Peter Parker. I don't like that he's against Miles in this moment.
Yeah.
Even though he's coming from the right place, it's just it felt like he wasn't on his side.
Yeah.
And that really bothered me. And so to have that moment right afterwards where he's talking through with him and saying, just hold my baby. I really, really, really like that scene a lot.
A skybound bullet train, an incredibly animated fight. At one point in Miguel's lunge, a frame flashes from an animated storyboard cell, including some artist notes, Imperial Violet and Crimson Red. This is what instructs the artist which ink color to fill in the character with. These shades are the specific shades of the red and indigo for Miguel's suit. You'll notice these kind of lines and notes often hover around Miguel and his tech.
Yes.
I just love how it hints at Miguel at being a tech head and a control freak, constantly trying to upgrade and upkeep his own animation as he repeatedly has to replug his techno-organic suit. This is what Miles uses against Miguel here, placing his palm on his shoulder, overloading the suit, giving him a classic, hey. And then revealing he intentionally lured all the spider people high above the city so that he could just leap off the train back to the base. Peter B. Parker says, I did teach him that, so I feel like a pretty good mentor, referring to when Peter B. Parker in the 2018 film just...
So Erik Voss knows all the lines, right?
Yeah.
He deliberately didn't deliver Miles Morales' line just now. He doesn't say, hey.
Giving him a classic, hey.
He says, I'm gonna do my own thing.
Yeah.
Why didn't Erik Voss say that line just now?
Because it would have sounded funny coming from Erik Voss, okay?
Miles Morales says, I'm gonna do my own thing, and then shocks him, and then Miguel goes flying.
Referring to when Peter B. Parker in the 2018 film just jumped off the ledge and fell into the collider beam so that he could go home. Miles goes invisible and sneaks past Margot. He scans his DNA, and briefly you can see the scan reading Earth 42, since it reads the DNA of the spider that bit him. So the go-home machine goes to work. It's a robot in the shape of a spider, wrapping Miles up in a web of lasers. Miguel tries to pry in, but when given the option to reboot the system, Margot decides at the last second to just let Miles go home. So Miles tumbles into this red and green Brooklyn where it rains. It's a color scheme that we haven't seen before, so it kind of hits us as really eerie and off, but it bears a similar palette to the 1610 universe that Miguel, Ben Reilly, and Jess go to, making this a really effective visual fake out. Back in 616B, Peter and MJ put Mayday to bed, and MJ says there's no playbook on being a parent, you just have to make adjustments at halftime. Which feels like a meta nod to this story's two-part structure. Across the Spider-Verse ends at halftime, Beyond the Spider-Verse being the second half, where Peter and Gwen now have to make adjustments and put some new players on the field. Captain Stacy tells his daughter Gwen that he's quitting being a cop, and he gives her the gadget that Hobie built using tech stolen from Miguel. On the screen it reads Project Bootleg, and for the strap he used a Union Jack pattern band. So Miles swings through Times Square where all of his villains past and present are haunting him. We see the giant hands of the Spot reaching out to him, but in Times Square if you look closely you see W and W's instead of M&Ms, and Soca Coca, which is a giveaway that this is not 1610, because remember in his universe it's Coca Soda instead of Coca-Cola. Ben Reilly camps out outside Miles' room in 1610, but Gwen takes him out, and this is right as we see Miles arriving home, so we naturally just assume it's the same universe. multiverse. I love when movies do this. So my favorite example is Silence of the Lambs, when you think Clarice Starling and the rest of the FBI are at the same house, but then you realize the raid is happening at the wrong place, and Clarice is at Buffalo Bill's house by herself. This also happens in The Fellowship of the Ring, when you think the ring wraiths are about to stab the hobbits in their beds, but they're actually across the street. It always works on me. And the way they tease this out is so well done. Rio asks Miles why he changed his hair. She doesn't remember giving him any advice. Miles, though, has a speed bag by his door now, as in Earth 42, Miles would be more of an aggressive fighter. Also, Earth 42 Miles' room has less toys and posters and more stuff in milk crates. Around the house, there aren't really that many photos of Jeff Morales, just the mother and the son.
I just associate milk crates with how people move their records around.
You know what's so funny? Like, it's like I noticed all of these things subconsciously because when I was watching it and I saw him in the room, my brain went, oh, his room looks different.
Yeah.
I don't think he's in his room. He must be in a different room in the house.
Yeah.
That is the only explanation. And I told you this after as well. Like, the whole spider, the thing where it was like the DNA is from Earth 42. I clocked that, but then the movie tricked me so successfully that even though I clocked that it said, oh, Earth 42, and my brain went, that's not his Earth. When this moment happened, I was still like, oh, that's his mom. Like, he's back at home, blah, blah, blah. Because I really wanted him to be. I think that's what happened.
Yeah.
Around the house, there aren't really that many photos of Jeff Morales, just the mother and the son, because it would have been too painful to have too many photos of him around. Miles reveals himself as Spider-Man, but Rio doesn't know who it is. And for a second, we're just like, oh, she's just a mom who doesn't really get it. But no, there is no Spider-Man in this universe. Miles demonstrates with just sad little whip, question mark? And there's a great match cut with Gwen standing on the ceiling of Miles' empty room in 1610. Cut to Miles in Earth 42 with his mom, and Miles finally figures it out and it hits us like a hammer. Uncle Aaron walks through the door, having never died in this dimension because there's no Spider-Man, and they go to the rooftop. The city is plagued with crime, on fire, and the worst gut punch, the rooftop mural. In place of the Aaron Memorial now has a memorial for Jeff Morales. In the upper corners of that mural, Pichelli and Bendis, for Sarah Pichelli and Brian Michael Bendis, creators of the Miles Morales character. Miles gets KO'd by his alternate Prowler self before he sees it coming. His spider sense never went off, maybe because he can't sense himself, especially if that variant self doesn't have spider powers. Miles wakes up tied to Aaron's punching bag, the same one that he used to work out on in the 2018 film, and the one Miles tied Peter B. Parker to. Aaron puts on an album, Ain't No Love by A Lion Unleashed, featuring Bobby Blue Band. Aaron punches the bag, releasing a blast of CMYK dots, like all the ink was slammed out of it. We briefly hear the voice of J.K. Simmons, J. Jonah Jameson, reporting crime from the TV as a younger Prowler steps forward, Miles G. Morales, whose hair is braided, the same one we saw back in the Spot's backstory of the spider that left Earth 42. Our Miles' face is lit red on one side, blue on the other, mixing in the middle as Prowler purple. His fingertip manages to produce a small spark on the chain, but he doesn't have his full palm free. Meanwhile, Gwen reunites with Peter B. Parker in Mayday as we hear her drum solo returning from the opening minutes, and we see the new band that she has put together, including Gwen, Peter B. Parker, Mayday, Hobie Brown, Privateer Prabhakar, Margot Kess Spider Bite, and returning from the first film, but not saying anything, Penny Parker, Spider-Ham, and Spider-Man Noir. And we end with Gwen asking us the line, "You want in?"
Duh.
This explains why the film opened the way it did. From Gwen's point of view, a third-person account on what Miles went through, telling us why she quit her band, saying let's do things differently this time, and why the opening images included things that happened to Miles throughout the film. This was all Gwen's sales pitch, her recruiting mission, what she said to every single one of these spider people to get her to join her team, to join this rescue mission, and this brave step to defy the Spider Society. So yeah, we want in, and go ahead and take my money for Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse next year. Holy shit, what a cliffhanger and what a film.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah.
So did you catch all the moments in the beginning of the film that were sort of showing you previews, for lack of a better word, of moments that were going to come later on?
Not really, I guess, in a sense. Like I didn't clock.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Because when I was watching it the second time, I noticed that right away. I'm like, oh, they're showing you like a lot of moments that are going to take place later in the film. And I didn't even think about it my first run through. It's
but
like,
well, how would you know?
well, yeah, I mean, you're just taking so much information in. It's all kind of hitting you at once. And so I didn't know what to look for the first time I was watching it. You know, you're just sort of wrapped up in the narrative.
In the story. I mean, within the first 5 minutes, I was already like, like when Gwen found out that the lizard that she had killed was actually her, Peter Parker, I was already like, oh my God, we're barely started in this movie and I'm already like needing the tissues. And then Javi handed me a tissue and I was like, thank you.
Yeah. No, I actually like him as Peter Parker. Peter Quaid. What's his name?
Jack Quaid.
Jack Quaid. Yeah. I don't.
Yeah.
Well, that actor from not Invincible, but the Boys.
Yeah.
I actually, when Erik Voss said he played Peter Parker in Gwen's story, I was like, oh, like I can totally see why they would have him play Peter Parker. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
He's very much that kind of character. And this was an excellent breakdown considering the movie just came out. I mean, it's kind of wild how much information they were able to pull together and do a comparison analysis between this film, the last film, and other Spider-Man films. In fact, the part that kind of blew my mind a little bit was when they were talking about when Gwen and Miles were hanging out, flying through the city. And they compared it to another Spider-Man film where I forgot which one it was, but they were like swinging from cranes.
Oh yeah, that was the Amazing Spider-Man, I think.
Whatever it was, I'm like, that's crazy. Like, that's just nuts to me that you were able to like link those two things together.
Yeah, like a lot of work, a lot of knowledge went into this. Like, I always enjoy watching their videos because they just feel so insightful.
I was waiting for him to say that somehow we missed that part of the horde of Spider-Men chasing Miles Morales was Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield or Tom Holland.
Oh, yeah, that would have been funny, huh?
Because, like, it is just strange to me that they are not there, given that all the authentic Spider-Men are there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, interesting. I think maybe, at least for this movie, it would have been too much of a distraction. Do you know what I mean? Like, maybe you're onto something there, and Erik Voss as well, which is like, maybe they will include more of the live action Spider-Man, but I think for right now, if they did that in this movie, it would have like kind of taken the focus away.
I mean, it's not the first time that live action stuff is introduced to animation. There was a movie called Happy Feet that happened years ago. For those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, I'm sure most of you watching this know what Happy Feet is, but I think in the last 20 minutes of that film, there was live action.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not the penguins, but there was other live action stuff going on.
Okay.
Yeah. And WALL-E, there was live action. And so, that's something you see sometimes. And so to take it like to a place that's ballistic, like it would just be in line with the style of the film. So it would not surprise me if it goes there in Beyond the Spider-Verse. You guys, thanks so much for hanging out. Hopefully you enjoyed this with us. Make sure to hit the subscribe button, please, bell icon, all notifications, and vote this up. Let us know what you caught that Erik Voss did not. Would love to hear that.
Yeah.
That's it for now. I'm Jabby Coy. This is
ACHARA Kirk.
Peace out.